Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and as you can see, we've been doing quite a bit of work on our 2005 Honda CRF450R. In this project, we're basically leaving no nut or bolt untouched, but today we're going to focus in on the rear braking system. So let's step over to the parts table and let me show you the parts that I'm going to use to rebuild this old war horse. All right guys, here's what we're going to go with. We have a combination of your OEM parts with a couple of aftermarket upgrades. On the OEM side, we're going with, well, basically an entirely new system. New master cylinder, new slave cylinder, new brake pedals, new hoses, new brake pads, seals, everything that we're going to need. But we are upgrading it with a shark fin from Moose, as well as a bling pack that will be used throughout this project. Now we're only going to be using one particular piece at this time, but the entire pack will get used by the time I'm finished with the entire project. Now why am I replacing the entire system? Well, let me show you. This is what we were faced with. Now, can I go through and rebuild the master and the caliper and clean all this up reasonably well? Yes, but I want it to be better than factory, and there's nothing quite as satisfying as opening up a brand new factory sealed package and putting all new parts on the machine that you're restoring. Now, as far as the special tools, there's really not going to be any, but I will call out any tools that I use along the way so you can minimize how many trips you're going to make to your toolbox. Speaking of toolboxes, let me open up mine and we'll dive into this project. All right guys, let's start by transferring our caliper over to our new shark fin. And it looks like we just got a 6mm Allen holding in the front section. Now, the back section should just slide right off that bolt, or that pin rather, pivot pin. Next, let's remove the pin. Put a little bit of Loctite on those threads. Install it in the new fin. Next, let's pull off our little spring plate. All right, see if we can get it primed. There we go. Last but not least, this little sealing boot. And what you're doing is taking that edge and working it into the groove. That's got it. We've got the boot, and that pin already has some caliper grease on it, but we're going to add in a little more just inside the bore of the shark fin. We should be good to go on the back side, but a little bit more. Now, slide that over that front pin, or slide that over the pin. Now, we can reinstall the front pin and tighten it down. Now we want to torque this bolt to 16 foot-pounds. Now, I should be able to hold it, but if it's too much for me, I can always wait until it's mounted to the machine and then do it there. Just don't forget that part if you decide to go that route. 16 coming up. Piece of cake. All right guys, why did I decide to go with a shark fin protector for the rear disc? Because if you don't, then you run the risk of that happening. Now that we've got our caliper attached to our new fin, let's pull off the rear tire and get it slid into place. hold that in position. So let's get you back up there. There we go. Like I said, doesn't a bunch of new parts look good on an old machine? All right, guys, we just need to get our spring installed. And remember, it goes on this first ledge, and these two little points are actually grabbing onto the inside of the caliper itself. So you can rest it up against the edge, and then use the small screwdriver to push it into place. Just like that. Now we can go ahead and grab our pads and get them into place. Just make sure that you get these edges down onto that ledge on the inside. Now don't forget the little O-ring that goes on the end of the pin. And if you have a new set of OEM pads like I'm using, it comes with that. We're going to get our pin in. It's just an 8mm head. And then we're going to torque it to 13 foot-pounds. Next, let's get our master cylinder back into position. We're going to use just a little bit of blue Loctite. And then each one of these bolts will get torqued to 13 foot-pounds. And that is a 5mm hex. Here we go. All right, 13 coming up. Now next, let's get our pivot bolt and go ahead and load it up with a little bit of grease. Make sure it gets down into that groove. Now if you're reusing yours, you want to add in some red Loctite before you go to install it. But this is a new bolt, so it already has some on the threads. All right. We'll add just a little bit more, now that I've taken my gloves off, in here, into the seals. Be careful when you're feeding this through and make sure it goes over these seals properly and doesn't try to bend them in. There we go. And do go ahead and take the grease off of the threads, because that kind of negates having the thread locker in there. And this is an 8mm hex, and we're going to take it to 27 foot-pounds. Now I do want to make one note here. If yours does not have the engine in it yet, you will need to pull that back off when you go to install the engine. But we're here today just to show you how to do the brakes. So just pretend there's an engine in there right now. 27 foot-pounds coming up. Now before we install our pin, go ahead and put some more grease into this little section right here. Then we'll add some to our pin. In she goes. Now, you just bring in your cotter pin. That's all it takes. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and get our spring in place. Now let's go ahead and get our new hose in place. forget your 2 washers. Make sure they're the correct ones, copper ones, because their job is to seal this up, and then your banjo bolt. Now this one routes right around here, so that's where it wants to end up. Same scenario with your washers as you did on the back. Now when you tighten this down, you want to make sure it's against the stop to keep it away from the spring. Now both of these get torqued to 25 foot-pounds. That you do not want to guess at. There we go. All right. Guys, we're almost finished with the installation. We just have a couple of clamps that we need to get in place that holds our hose. Now this is just a personal preference, but I'm going to add in a little Loctite for each one of the Phillips head screws. One more here. And there. All right. Now we just need to open it up and bleed it. All right, guys, when you're removing the diaphragm, make sure you put it somewhere where it's going to stay clean. Next, pick up some DOT4 brake fluid. We'll fill up the master, start bleeding it. Now keep in mind, this is the reservoir and it's a very small amount, so you really need to keep an eye on it, because if air gets in there as you're bleeding it out, you're going to have to start over again. Now, do you have to have a catch bottle to do this? No, I just don't feel like making a mess on my workspace. All right, open it up and away we go. Guys, I can warn you, this takes a little while because we've got to bring it into the actual seals, but it's starting to draw it in. Just make sure you keep an eye on your level. Now, if you've got a vacuum bleeder, it makes it a lot easier just to pull it down through, but we're going to go ahead and do it the hard way. All right, guys, I'm getting hungry, so we're going to move this along and use a vacuum bleeder. But you definitely want to have the wrench on the bleeder valve because it's really easy to pull too much through. Making quick work of it now, aren't we? All right, guys, we're going to put in just a little bit more. And bring it down to the level that we want it just by pumping it. So we're going to disconnect our bleeder, reconnect our catch can, and then finish it out this way. Pump it up, release. Because doing it this way, you get a better sight of any air bubbles that still have to come through. With this, is pulling it at such an extreme rate, you really can't catch that. So I prefer to finish them off like this. Because see, there's still some air coming out. Now we're down to our level. Let's put a little bit more in it and do it one more time. And the bleeder did the majority of the work, but I prefer finishing it out like this. Looks like our bubbles have finally ceased. There it comes. And that should be it. We're dead even with it. All right, guys, I'm going to fill it up one more time, but not all the way, because we're done bleeding. We're just setting the level now. And what we're going for is we want our level to be right here on the inside. So let's bring it down to that point. That should be it. Now we can take our diaphragm, if yours isn't already straight, straighten it out. And we've got our new bling cap from Moose. Disconnect our catch can hose and then put our cap on. Good to go. All right, guys, that's pretty much going to wrap this one up. I will be coming back to add in a little bit more bling, protect both the master and the caliper itself. Well, listen, if you need these or any other parts for your machine, why don't you come see us at Partzilla.com and we can get you taken care of. If you have any questions or comments about this video, leave them in the section below and I'll do my best to answer them. And hey, if you like what you see and you want to see me continue work on this project, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified with whatever I'm working on next. We just want to say thank you for shopping here with us at Partzilla, and we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a great day.